Set a lump of energy down on the lattice. A knot of excited rotors, a stored pulse, a standing wave that refuses to disperse. Two questions follow, and this whole chapter lives between them. First, does the substrate hold? A pile of energy that could lower its own energy by tearing the locked ground state apart would be no ground state at all, and then the theory has no vacuum to build on. Second, does the lump bend the world around it? The Einstein reflex says, of course, energy curves geometry, but the substrate answers more quietly than Einstein. The lump does push back, and the geometry does respond. Yet the response is a scalar echo obeying a Poisson equation, not the tensor equation of general relativity. And worse, or more honestly, it bends light without pulling on matter. Two charges, then let us see which one sticks. One thing before we begin. Advaita Chakra Theory is a speculative, exploratory framework, not established, peer-reviewed physics. Much of what follows is honest conjecture that still needs validation. Watch it in that spirit as ideas to test, argue with, and refute. Open the file on matter. Expand the substrate Hamiltonian to quadratic order about the locked ground state, and every fluctuation obeys one master matrix, d of k equals I inverse, times m plus twice epsilon k times j. At the band bottom, k goes to 0, epsilon k goes to 0, and what is left is the locking Hessian alone. So the rest energies of matter are the generalized eigenvalues of m relative to imv equals omega squared iv. That is derived. It is simply d of k evaluated at k equals 0. Now read the structure because it is decisive. The locking Hessian carries an exact null vector, the uniform shift of every channel, so one eigenvalue is pinned at 0. That is the guaranteed massless goldstone, the emergent photon. Every other eigenvector is lifted a gap, a positive frequency, a mass of h bar omega over c effective squared. Matter and the force carrier are not two substances. They are the null direction and the gap directions of one matrix. Charge 1, does the substrate hold? Coarse grain the locked phase and let neither do the work. Translation invariance in space and time hands you a conserved stress tensor, and its energy density T0 splits into exactly 3 quadratic forms, one for inertia, one for stiffness, one for locking. In the locked regime, all 3 matrices are positive semi-definite. Inertia is positive by construction, stiffness is positive because it is a stiffness, and the locking Hessian is positive with that one null direction we just met. A sum of non-negative quadratic forms is non-negative, so T0 is greater than or equal to 0 everywhere, with equality only on the goldstone. That is derived, and it is the weak energy condition, not assumed here, but obtained as a sum of squares. The verdict on charge 1, the vacuum is stable. No fluctuation lowers the energy, there is no negative mode runaway, and every excitation costs a non-negative rest energy. It also does work far downstream. It fixes the sign of an induced Newton constant, and it outlaws the reactionless drive. Before the second charge, a piece of housekeeping that is also a confession. An early draft of this corpus tried to read the electromagnetic field straight off the goldstone gradient, a vector potential proportional to the gradient of the phase, and a field strength built from it in the usual way. That construction dies on inspection. The field strength of a gradient is the difference of 2 second derivatives taken in opposite orders, and partial derivatives commute. So mu nu is identically 0. One line of calculus, and the smooth photon is retracted. But look what the retraction force is. The only way a phase field can carry a quantized, conserved, local electromagnetic label is around a defect, where the phase is not single-valued, and then the loop integral of the phase gradient, divided by 2 pi, is an integer. Charge is a winding number, not a field amplitude. That is not a loss. It is an overclaim demoted to its honest topological core, and the integer that survives becomes electric charge in part 5. Now charge 2. Let the stored energy push back. The minimal way energy can feed the geometry is to modulate the one quantity the geometry is made of, the stiffness, whose ratio to the inertia sets the speed of light. So posit a local linear coupling delta J equals kappa times T0. Be clear about that kappa. It is asserted. It is a dimensionful knob not derived from the microscopic Hamiltonian, and everything downstream inherits it. Given the coupling, though, the rest is exact. Since C effective squared goes as J at fixed inertia, a fractional stiffness change is half a fractional speed change. Feed that into the exact optical curvature of chapter 6 and linearize, the quadratic gradient term is second order and drops, and the curvature you induce is the Laplacian of the energy density. That is the headline, and it is derived. Put a Gaussian blob of energy on the lattice and the induced curvature is its Laplacian, a deep negative core with a positive ring outside it, exactly linear in the injected energy. Now read off what that equation does not say. First, it is Poisson, not Einstein. It is sourced by T0 alone, one component of the stress tensor, and it is linear. The tensor equation of general relativity couples the full T mu nu and is non-linear, because gravity gravitates. Here two energy blobs induce the plane sum of their curvatures with no cross term. That is a sharp falsifiable departure, and it is the chapter's first prediction. Second, and harder to swallow, it bends light but pulls on nothing. The perturbation lives entirely in the stiffness sector, and the metric it dresses is ultrastatic, with R0 equal to 0. A spatial curvature with a vanishing time component deflects null rays beautifully. It is a graded index lens, but it puts no term in the geodesic equation of a slow massive particle, and it dilates no clocks. A test mass released at rest beside a static energy blob does not fall. This is not gravity yet. This is optics. So put a number on it and watch the knob turn. Take a static, roughly spherical blob of total energy E. The Poisson structure is solved by the usual massless Green's function, and you get a 1/r index well, the graded index analog of a Newtonian potential, a null ray with impact parameter B threading that well is deflected by kappa E over 4 pi jb. Now demand that this reproduce the observed gravitational light bending 4g over c squared b. Match the two expressions and kappa comes out around 16 pi jg over c to the fourth. Read that slowly because it is the point of the example. Kappa is not predicted. It is tuned to Newton's constant after the fact. The substrate gives you the form for free, a 1/r scalar well linear in the energy, and then buys the magnitude with a fitted constant. And even after the fit, the well bends light without pulling matter. The fitted lensing is right. The fitted force is still absent. On charge 1, the substrate holds. T0 is greater than or equal to 0, derived from 3 positive quadratic forms, and the locked vacuum is stable. On the retracted photon derived, and it converts charge into an integer winding. On charge 2, a split verdict. The coupling constant kappa is asserted, undetermined, and fitted to Newton's constant rather than computed. The scalar Poisson response is standard physics relabeled. It is Nordstrom's 1913 scalar gravity, wearing the stiffness sector as a costume. And the induced curvature going as the Laplacian of the energy density is derived, real, linear, and sharply falsifiable. Name what is not claimed the tensor Einstein equation, a predicted strength of gravity, and any pull on matter at all. The honest scope of this chapter is 4 words, linear, scalar, stiffness sector, but the missing Newtonian force is not missing from the theory. It is missing only from this coupling. It lives in the inertia and locking sector, the one we deliberately did not vary. Next chapter where the lapse actually lives. A word of acknowledgement. This work was inspired in part by the non-dual teachings of Sri Narayana Guru, that the creator, the creation, and the substance of creation are fundamentally one. Symbols from the Hindu tradition, the Sudarshan chakra and the Shivalinga, suggested the analogies behind the chakra model. They are acknowledged as philosophical and symbolic inspiration. The physics stands on its own. Thank you for watching. If this made you think, the book and the next chapter are linked below. Until then, one substance and how far it reaches.